Hello, biology students, and we are going to talk today about changes in classification. And that's important to talk about because things change in our systems of classification. Taxonomic classification is not a fixed thing. It depends on a lot of different things. It depends on the interpretation of the evidence. Scientists often disagree about how it's interpreted, and also there is new data that comes about, and so changes will occur in the way we classify things based on that new data. Here's some examples of classification changes, major changes. Linnaeus, when he originally came up with his system of classification, he only assigned two kingdoms, plant and animal. Here are just some representations from those kingdoms. But we had understanding that came about of microorganisms since he set those two kingdoms up that really changed the way we thought about things. Organisms were discovered that absolutely did not fit into either of these kingdoms. And because of that, a lot of that came about because of the microscope and better microscopes that were being created to view microorganisms, and just simply after the microscopes were invented, people began studying these microorganisms, and so they were able to begin to understand some things. At first they tried to assign each of the microorganisms into plant and animal, but that soon became very difficult. So additional kingdoms were suggested at that point. Another major discovery was the invention of electron microscopes. Here's a picture of an old electron microscope, one of the original ones, and they enabled scientists to see even better what was going on in cell structure, and they allowed us to confirm the differences between prokaryote and eukaryote cell structure and how they were very, very different. And in light of the evidence that came about because of those microscopes, the addition of another kingdom was added called Monera, and that was the kingdom that included all of the prokaryotes. So just if you'll recall those kingdoms, the kingdom Monera since has been split into two kingdoms, bacteria and archaebacteria, and but this was when the kingdom Monera came about. Then another important recognition was a man named Whitaker. He recognized that fungi are very different from plants, and so a separate kingdom was created for them as well, the kingdom fungi. And a man named Carl Woese is probably one of the more recent contributors to major classification changes. And in the 1970s and 80s, he did work comparing RNA sequences of different species. And his findings showed that archaea, remember that's its own kingdom, and the organisms of archaea are as different from other bacteria as bacteria are from eukaryotes. Now remember, our cells are eukaryotic, plant cells are eukaryotic. So his finding was actually very surprising to some, and some scientists treated archaea at that point as a separate kingdom. And that's the model that we've presented as well, the six kingdom model. Some scientists went and compared the DNA sequences of animals, which led to proposals to completely rewrite the evolutionary history of Animalia. So there were a lot of changes that came about because of this, because the RNA sequence, being able to compare that directly was a major change in the way we think of some classification. So even now, there are a lot of disagreements, and it's important to remember that not all scientists look at classification the same. Some scientists do not accept a 5-kingdom system, some do not accept a 6-kingdom system. Some scientists will place the multicellular green algae with the plants, and some have proposed new kingdoms for the red algae or other protist phyla. There are some scientists that would like to see the kingdom of protists split into multiple kingdoms and have even more than just the 6-kingdom system. So there is a lot of disagreement. The most common system would be the 6-kingdom system or the 5-kingdom system. Those are the most common among scientists. The classification does reflect the goals of the one who is doing the classifying. So it's important to remember that, say for example, if someone is going to classify and group organisms by whether they are producers, consumers, or decomposers, that would work really well for someone who is studying ecology, but it would not work very well for someone studying anatomy or evolutionary history. So the goal of the one who is classifying is important to remember. Now, if you'll remember at the beginning of the unit, we conducted a little exercise where we all got to play taxonomist and classify candy into different groups. So if you would have looked around at some of your neighbors and other students in the class, you'd see that not everybody classified in the same way. Some people did, and some people did not. And some people even used similar classification, say headings, but the candy that they put in there was different. So it's just important to keep in mind how difficult it is to classify and how difficult it is for everyone to agree on those classifications, especially when we're talking about something as complex as all of the living organisms in the world. So classification is an important aspect of biology, or of anything really. It helps us to see what we know. It reflects our knowledge about things and about the different things we're classifying. It also helps us to think more clearly about the great diversity that we have in front of us. So I hope you enjoyed this unit, and if you look on the next page, you can see a few ideas for advanced proficiency. Here are just a few ideas. Please come up with your own ideas as well, because I know you all have great ideas. You are welcome to write paragraphs about your ideas. You are welcome to, or about the research that you do. You are welcome to draw pictures or diagrams or charts or anything that would help you to express that you know the different ideas here that we're studying. So we'll see you in class.